Hello everyone and welcome to another tutorial from Pixiedrops Digital Backdrops. My name is Christina and I'm the owner, and I welcome you to another learning experience. I decided to work on this shelf backdrop because this is one of my most popular items. And parents absolutely love this. Obviously, this is something that you need to do as a composite for baby safety. We definitely can't be putting babies on shelves. So I thought I'd show you two different approaches today as to how I would go about creating this composite and making sure that we can get a believable looking bear on a shelf. So I've chosen two images today with two different strategies. First thing that I do need to do, as I do with every single digital composite, I'm looking for the direction of light, and generally I'm going to be shooting for my backdrop before I start my session. So as you can see here, the shadows are dropping off on the right side of the teddy bears, and so that leads me to believe that the light is coming from top and left. And because I shot it and I know my style, I definitely know the light is coming from top and left. Here's another little giveaway. The catch light in the bear's eye, you can see the light is coming from this direction. So when I'm shooting my subjects, I'm going to make sure to use the same direction of light. So as you can see here, I've got a little guy, and he's just in a bean bag, and I've shot from the top. And I chose a dark brown layer so that it would be similar to this tone here, so that I could pick up some of his natural shadowing from his shots, so I don't have to actually create shadows later. It's a little cheat of mine that I use quite often. Here's my phone. I always play either ocean waves or some other white noise when I'm photographing babies. And then in this image, I actually took an old piece of board and tucked it up under baby's feet, so she looks like she is actually sitting on a shelf. So I'm going to do both of these today, and I think it's going to be a stylistic choice, which one you like better. I think both options are quite viable. This is a little bit darker. As you can see, it's just a piece of black blanket. So that might make it a little bit more challenging to do the blending, but we'll give it a shot. So I'm going to start with this little guy, and I'm just going to make a rough cutout around him, and I've used the lasso tool here. Control C, Control V, and then my move tool. Just going to pick him up and drop him in to the backdrop. As you can see, he's quite a bit too big. So first things first, I'm going to size him down. Control T, grab the corner and hold Shift to maintain your aspect ratio. And I find this is also going to be a matter of choice how big you want the baby to be. This particular bear is actually quite big in real life. So it wouldn't be too far unrealistic to have the baby the size of the bear, or even a little bit smaller. It is quite a big bear, as I said. I might just try that there. And then to get it look like he is sitting on the shelf, I'm just going to rotate a little bit and bring him down. You can always make minor adjustments later. And I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to create a layer mask and head on over to my brush tool and select the black brush. And I have my opacity and flow just about at 27% here, because I want to maintain some of the original image. So I'm just going to start painting off just ever so slightly here. These creases might give me a bit of a run for my money, but we'll give it a shot. I might turn this up just to make this go a little bit faster. Now, obviously, you can use the quick selection tool and select around your subject and do it that way. That's not my preferred way of doing things. I find I get a more realistic result when I actually shoot for the backdrop and then use the shadows that I've created in real life. But certainly there are many ways to go about doing things in Photoshop, and I kind of like that I have my own little way of doing things. So you can make one of two choices here. I'm going to leave his knee out in front of this bear, which means I want a little bit of this shadow. So I'm just going to click X to come back to the white to paint a little bit more shadow back. I could have removed this here and have Teddy's foot in front of his knee to make it look like he's tucked in there. And I may do that over here, but for that particular side, that's the choice I made. It's just a stylistic choice. It's going to be up to you. So as you can see here, I have shot on a very similar color, well, and a darker color, so I have those natural shadows if I want them. That's a bit harsh there, so I'm going to pull it back, and then I'm going to add them back, the white, put it on a really low flow and opacity, bigger brush, and I'm just going to gently add that back in so you get a little bit more of a realistic shadow. And back to the black, we're going to keep painting this off. And you see, I have him nudged up against this bear here. We have some shadows falling so that he looks like he's tucked right into that bear. And I kind of like the way that looks. I'm just going to take out, just turn this right down again. Take out some of this harsh shadow here because it wouldn't be quite that dark. We can always add back. We'll head back to the white brush and add back. I'm going to turn that right up all the way to 100% so I see what I have in my original image. And I'm hit X and head back to the black key, and I'm going to take this out. Because if we did shoot this on this shelf, there wouldn't be shadowing on the front side because this is where the light came from. Click X again, back to the white. This is the beauty of using a layer mask. If you go too far, you can always just go back and make adjustments as needed. Hit the X again to go back to black and remove. And for now, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to come in here at about 70% and start removing in here. So I'm going to leave a little bit of the original image behind, but not too much, because again, on the leading side where your light source is, you wouldn't have a whole lot of shadowing. I'm going to go ahead and turn that right up so I get the remainder of this. Going to get a soft brush. And just allow the edges to blur into the top of the hat there. And I think I went a little bit too far, so I'm going to lower my brush. I'm using the hotkeys, the left bracket and right bracket, to make my brush larger and smaller, in case you were wondering. And I'm just going to zoom in here so I can see a little bit clearer what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and add this back so we have a little clearer edge and a little bit of that fluff. There would be a little tiny shadow there. That's too much, but we can take that off. Come down to the black and we'll hide it a little bit. But there would be a little tiny shadow. So that makes good sense there. And I think what I'm going to do here, because these creases are driving me a little bit nuts, I'm going to come back to the original image here, make sure I've selected it, and then I'm going to go to my patch tool, and I'm going to select it and move into a smoother area so that I'm working with smooth shadows here. And I think that's going to make life a little bit easier. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to come back over here to my layer mask. You can use the B key or just select the brush. And again, we're going to be hiding this, so I'm going to be on the black. I'm going to turn this up a little bit, maybe to 40. And then I'm just going to make sure I have a nice big soft brush. And I'm going to start edging in here because I do want to keep quite a bit of that shadow so we can keep it as realistic as we were hoping for. Shadows are the giveaway when you're doing composite work. As you can see here, we've got quite a heavy shadow off of the teddy bears, so it makes very good sense to have a heavy shadow off of our subject. So I think I've actually even taken away a little bit too much, so I'm going to add it back. I'm just going to click that X key and we'll go back to the white again. And I'm going to turn this brush up, make it a little bit bigger so it softens at the edge. And I'm just going to run it down here so we get more of that shadow back. And I like that. I just don't like this line here, so back to the black, and I'm going to remove that. I'm going to zoom out for you. And as you can see, in fairly short order, we've got ourselves a lovely bear on a shelf composite. There's a few more tweaks we can do here. I might go in and just massage these shadows a little bit. And we could probably bring the exposure down on baby just a tiny bit. So let's start there. I'm going to select his layer and then I'm going to go to filter and camera raw. And then I'm going to go to exposure and just bring it down a little bit. And go ahead and click OK. And go to the history to show you the difference. Before and after. It's not a huge difference, but it's enough of a difference that it makes a little bit more sense. There's less of a highlight here. So I think I will come down into the shadows down here because they look a little funky. I think they're just a little too harsh. I might soften those up a bit. So we've got the black selected, so we're hiding. And we're going to come in here and hide that shadow. And we may have gone too far again, and that's okay. Let's come back. I'm going to turn this up so I can add back a nice crisp line on the edge here. And now I'm removing back and forth, but there is some trial and error when you're doing composites. Each one is different. Techniques don't change all that much, but just eyeballing, and I find zooming out really helps to see where you're at. So I've got this turned down. I'm going to add this back a bit, just very softly. So we've got that sort of harder line along the edge and then feathering out away from, and that's exactly what's going to be happening if we shot him in real life here. You know, you've got a little bit harsher shadow right near the subject, and then it feathers away. And I think that might even be a little much close to subject there. So we're going to go back in again, and we're going to remove a little bit. It's just a little bit harsh. And there we go. I think that's better. Turn this right down and come back and add a little bit back. And I'm happy with that. That's why I'm always going to be zooming out. I might add a tiny bit in here, and then I'm going to remove in here, and I think that is going to be good. So I'm going to add a little bit more down in here where his foot is closest to the backdrop. And then I'm going to flip over to the black, lower my brush, and paint out some of the shadow in here. All right, let's zoom out, see what we think of that. I'm really happy with that, and I think that we're going to move on to our next composite. So I'm going to go ahead and hide our subject there. And I'm going to come in and do the same thing here. I'm just going to do a quick selection. Let me come in a little bit closer this time. Do a quick selection. Pardon me, a little bit of a filming hiccup there. So quick selection, come right around, and then Control C, Control V, and we're going to drag her over to our backdrop. And again, the first thing to do is adjust the sizing. And we're going to just squeeze her in there. And click OK. And then we're going to create a layer mask. And we're going to do roughly the same thing. Just going to Control T and turn her a little bit. There we go. And then we're going to paint off parts of that layer that we don't need, and I'm going to come up to about 75% because we don't want a whole lot on this leading side here. And because of the way that I shot this, it's going to look a lot like she has a very flattened area there around her feet. So it really looks like she's sitting on the shelf. Okay, so as we come around to the side that would have the shadows, we're going to make sure that we leave some of them. As you can see, the shadows would start right about there, so I'm going to remove most of them up to there, and then I'm going to change my brush so it's a little bit lower opacity, lower flow, and a little bit bigger so that, you know, I'm feathering in. So we're going to come down to about 25 or so, and then increase the brush size and just start painting in. And we're going to leave quite a bit of that shadow there. Just one pass over so it's not all the way black. And then just massage in from the edges. This process can seem a little bit tedious, but it's well worth it if you're looking for that image that'll really surprise your clients. Okay, I'm just going to turn this up a bit. Just gently massaging in. And we might come back and add a little bit more around the ear there. We want to leave a little bit here. And here is where you get to make a choice again. So I didn't do it on the last one, so I'm going to do it here. I'm going to actually allow all of the bear's foot to show in front of her. And then it looks like she's tucked into this scene. And her little arm is kind of awkward there, so I'm going to see what we can do with this bear. This is all part of the original backdrop. Alright, so I've overcompensated, so I'm just going to flip over and get a smaller brush, and I'm going to paint some of that back in. And now we have our subject tucked in behind this teddy bear, and it really looks like she's part of the scene. So I'll just zoom out so you can take a look. I'm just adding back some shadows along the shelf. So let's zoom out, take a look there. And I'm really liking that. I think one thing I can see here is that this shadow looks a little funky, so we're going to just feather this in a little bit and then add maybe a little bit more in here. So back to the layer mask and increase this brush size, lower the opacity and the flow, and just bigger brush closer to her head, and then feather it out a little bit. And we definitely went a little too far there, so no problem, just flip the brush back over and paint it away. And I'm going to come in and add a bit more in here, and then a little bit more down in here. And then really turn this down and add a tiny bit in here, because I feel like it wouldn't cut off so harshly. And I see a little bit from the edge of our subject there, so I'm just going to blend that off. So I'm going to turn this up so it doesn't take as long. I'm just going to blend that off. And let's zoom out and have a look. I like it. I would just add a tiny bit more in here. So really just subtly, so it doesn't make such a harsh line. And there you have it, another baby on a shelf. We might want to come in and just warm her up a little bit and darken her down a little bit. So again, we're going to go to the camera raw filter, and I'm going to warm her up just a bit, and then I'm going to turn down the exposure. And we'll do the before and after so you can see. Perfect. And we can also do a layers or a levels adjustment if we like. So we'll do an adjustment layer. Levels, we'll clip it to the baby layer, and then we'll go ahead and lower it, darken it down a little bit, and then midtones. So this is the shadows, midtones, highlights. So we wanted a little bit more contrasty in the shadows, and we'll add a little bit to the highlight. Lovely. So we've got two very distinct baby on a shelf composites. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and feel free to ask any questions. Have a fabulous day.